What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here, welcome back to the channel. Before we get into today's video, we are 19 subs away from 200. We're getting there guys, 200 subs before the end of the summer. I know we can make it happen, but the moment we get to 200 subs, I'm opening up this Korean Strike of Neos booster box in its entirety on the channel, on the hopes of potentially pull this guy, Elemental Hero Air Neos, the so-called forbidden Yu-Gi-Oh card. Is it really forbidden? I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Now this channel gets to 500 subs, I'm opening up this Korean LOB booster box, excuse me, in its entirety on the channel that I got from my partners over at Collector Store. By checking them out, not only does it support them, it also supports the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. On the hopes of potentially pull a Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician. The possibilities are out there, guys. However, if this channel gets to 1,000 subs, I am opening up this first edition Toon Chaos box in its entirety on the channel that I also got from my partners at Collector Store, on the hopes to potentially pull my second ever Collector's Rare, because my first Collector's Rare is actually this Collector's Rare B-Cub from the Underworld that I got from my Genesis Impact box opening. So if you guys want to see those boxes get opened, maybe you guys want some more episodes of WWE's Biggest Issue, maybe you guys want more episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue, deck profiles, card discussions, WWE Top Gear videos, or maybe some premium live event predictions and results. Well, if you guys want all of that and more, my channel is the place to be. So if you guys have not done so already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell, smash that thumbs up button. Follow me on all of my social media. My ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. Hopefully, now I do want to point out really quickly, I'm actually using my phone to try and record this video. I've had to do this about two or three times. I don't know what's going on with my phone. Maybe I need to maybe I need some more storage on my phone. I don't know what the hell's going on, but hopefully the picture quality is a bit better. But for today's video, I have an updated Dark World deck profile for you guys today. This is basically using up some of the new cards from the Jack Atlas structure deck, and it also uses up the brand new colorless Chaos King of Dark World, which I believe we'll be getting in the new Battles of Legend set, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but hopefully you guys are ready, and let's get to it. So first up, we have Rainbow over King of Dark World, only one copy. As I have said in previous Dark World deck profiles, each of these Dark World monsters has their own discard effect. So Rainbow over King's effect says that you can compulse any level 7 or lower Dark World monster to your hand from the field, and special summon this card from your graveyard. And it has an effect that says that when it's discarded by a card effect, you can add any level 5 or higher Dark World monster to your hand, except a copy of itself. However, if it was sent to the grave by an opponent's card effect, you get to special summon any level 4 or lower Dark World monster from your deck or grave to either side of the field, which is pretty good because you want that monster to be summoned on your side to go into your synchro place, which is pretty nuts. Then we have a single copy of Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World. This card is absolutely wild. This is basically your standard. I know that it's better to run it at 2, but I've got one in the main, one in the side, just in case if something in the main deck doesn't work out right, I can side that one card out and put in a second copy of Grapha. So Grapha's effect is basically the same as Rainbow, where you can compulse a monster to your hand from the board and special summon this card from the graveyard. But instead of a level 7 or lower, it's pretty much any Dark World monster, which is pretty good. Now, excuse me. Now, Grapha's discard effect, when it's sent to the grave by a card effect, you get to pop any card that your opponent has on board, which is nuts. But if it was discarded by an opponent's card effect, you get to look at any random card that they have in their hand, and if it's a monster, you summon it to your side of the field, which gives you more fodder to go into your synchro plays, which is pretty cool. So that's the basic idea. But what's even more cool is that these two together, fused with Dark World's Accession, or rather fused off of the effect of Dark World Accession, you get Grapha Dragon Overlord of Dark World, in which case you would be able to get both of their effects simultaneously, which will be Rainbow Chainlink 1 and Grapha Chainlink 2 to chain block your opponent from using Ash Blossom, which is pretty cool. And speaking of Rainbow, we are actually running the original Rainbow Overlord of Dark World, which has two functions. One is for Dark World Accession, and the second is for Ceruli. Dark World Accession lets you fuse Rainbow plus any 2 or more Fiend monsters, and you get colorless Chaos King of Dark World, which is absolutely insane. And then if you discarded Rainbow off of Cerule's effect, it can be treated as a Harpy's Feather Duster or a Raigeki, which is absolutely insane. Then of course we got two silver and 2 gold. These cards, these 2 cards are absolutely insane. Not only do they have a Monster Reborn effect when they're discarded by a card effect, but if they're discarded by an opponent's card effect, Silva forces your opponent to take 2 cards from their hand, put it into the bottom of the deck in any order, which is pretty cool. It gives you card advantage over your opponent with that effect, which is absolutely insane. God, I swear my mom's dog needs to shut up. And then Gold's effect basically lets you pop 2 cards that your opponent has on board, which is actually pretty insane. Bronze effect, basically whenever it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you get to discard a card. Targets, it basically just lets you go into any of your Dark World plays, depending on what you discard, which is absolutely insane. Snow's effect, actually 3 Bronze, 3 Snow. Snow's effect says that when it's discarded by a card effect, you get to add any Dark World card to your hand, which is absolutely insane. So, hang on guys, sorry guys, I have to fix my camera. There we go. I had to adjust it a bit. Anyway, it basically it's basically a Stratos for the whole deck, so it's pretty cool. But if it's discarded by an opponent's card effect, you get to special summon. You get to target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field, which is absolutely insane. Which again basically lets you, basically gives you fodder for even more synchro summoning, depending on what you have at your disposal, which is pretty cool. Now I know that a lot of players who play Dark World prefer Bro Huntsman of Dark World over Beige, but the reason why I prefer Beige over Bro Huntsman of Dark World is because of the fact that you don't need all that much draw power. You already have the draw power off of the effects of cards like Snow, cards like Morphine Jar, Resonator Engine, Resonator Call, Dark World Dealings, and even also the Gates of Dark World, which I am running quite a few copies of in the main deck. So you really don't need all that much draw power. So that's why I prefer Beige over Bro, because with Beige, if you have Beige, Crimson Resonator, and Dark World Dealings in your hand, the idea is Crimson Resonator, special summon, Dark World Dealings, draw a card, send Beige to your grave, Beige effect with trigger, you special summon Beige, sink them off into a Red Rising Dragon, and then basically Red Rising Dragon's effect with trigger, special summon Crimson's second effect with trigger, you special summon Red and Vision Resonator to your board. Red's effect with trigger, you gain 2100 life points off of Red Rising's attack. Boom. Red Supernova Dragon on board really fast. So that's the basic general, that's the general idea, if you will, of this deck, is to go into Red Supernova Dragon if you have Crimson plus Beige in hand, which is absolutely insane. Ceruli is nuts, because if it's discarded to the grave by a card effect, not only can you special summon this card to your opponent's field, but you would become Ceruli's opponent and you would be forced to discard a card. So you would basically, even if it didn't matter what you discarded, whether it was Rainbow, Grapha, Overlord, Silva, Gold, Snow, it didn't matter. All the effects of those monsters would get triggered, no matter what, which would be insane. Then of course, Morphing Jar basically lets you trigger off pretty much any Dark World cards, trigger off the effects of any Dark World cards that were discarded by Morphing Jar, which is pretty nuts. Then we got the Resonator package. So we have 2 Soul, 2 Vision, a Dark, 2 Crimson, 1 Red, and and 1 Synchron. Soul Resonator's effect on normal special summon, you can add a ooh, excuse me. You can add any level 4 or lower Fiend monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. So it basically acts as a second Stratos to add Brawn, Snow, Beige, or even Cerulli to your hand, or even also any of the tuners that they have at your disposal as well, which is pretty cool. But it also has another effect that says that if you have a Red Dragon Archfiend or a Synchro monster that mentions it, and one of your cards is about to be destroyed, you basically get to banish Soul Resonator instead. So it basically acts as a return of the Dragon Lords, if you will, which is absolutely insane. Then 2 Vision, the 2 Vision basically acts as a Cyber Dragon on a 2-star body, and if it's sent to the graveyard, you can add any spell or trap that has Red Dragon Archfiend in its text to your hand, which is pretty nuts. The only 3 that I'm running are Absolute Power Force, Crimson Gaia, and Red Zone, which those 3 cards are just absolutely nuts. And I'll explain what they do once we get into the back row. Dark Resonator, Dark Resonator, its effect is pretty much irrelevant, but it's in here as basically a third 3-star tuner to go into your level 8 synchro plays, which is pretty nuts. Then of course we got the 2 Crimson Resonator, which again, as I mentioned earlier, acts as a 1 card Red Supernova Dragon if you have Dark World Dealings and Beige in hand, or even if you have Brawn, Mad King of Dark World in hand, it can still work the same way, which is nuts. Red Resonator acts as a double summon, where on normal summon you can spell summon a level 4 or lower monster from your hand, which is good, and it also lets you gain life points when it's special summon, which is pretty cool. And then Synchron Resonator is basically Cyber Dragon monster reincarnation. So if you have a Synchro monster on board, you special summon it, and if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to target any Resonator monster in your grave, and you add it to your hand, which is really good. So that's the monster lineup. The spell lineup, I've got 2 copies of Resonator Engine, 2 Resonator Call, 3 Dark World Dealings, one Absolute Power Force, 3 Dark World Puppetry, a Dark World Accession, a Crimson Gaia, and 3 copies of Gates of Dark World. Resonator Engine is basically a mini pot of avarice. You take two of your Resonator tuner monsters, put them back into your deck, and you add any level 4 monster to your hand. Which, for the most part, you're gonna want to add Beige to your hand if you have Dark World Dealings in hand already, which is pretty good. Resonator Call is basically Rhoda for your tuner monsters. You add 1 to your hand. Not much else to say about that. Pretty self-explanatory on that part. Then we got 3 Dark World Dealings. This card is pretty good. Both you and your opponent draw 1, and you discard 1. It's that simple. There's no there's really like no no other way to explain it than Absolute Power Force. So if you have Red Dragon Archfiend on board, you activate this card during the battle phase, and if it attacks an opponent's monster, excuse me. There we go. Ooh, excuse me. There we go. There we go. You get to basically apply all 4 of these effects. That Red Dragon Archfiend gains 1,000 attack. Your opponent can't activate cards or effects, which is pretty crazy. It can inflict piercing damage when it attacks a defense position monster, and any battle damage that your opponent takes is also double. So it basically gives you access to potentially push for game, which is pretty cool. Dark World Puppetry is basically call by times 3, or rather, since you have 3 puppetry, it's call by times 9. So three per copy, and it basically lets you again target 3 cards in any graveyard, either yours or your opponent's. You banish them and you discard 1 fiend monster, which again you want that fiend monster to be cerulean the most, so you can get off all of their effects. And you can just go from there, which is pretty cool. And you can also banish this card from your grave, target any fiend monster that's in your banish pile. You add that card to your hand, which is pretty nuts. Then of course we got Dark World Accession, which again is basically the poly for the whole deck. And you can even also add this card from your grave back to your hand simply by discarding a Dark World monster. So if you had already summoned Graphite Dragon Overlord to your board, next turn, when you add Dark World Accession, you can activate Dark World Accession and summon Colorless right off the bat, which is pretty cool. Now, Crimson Gaia, this card is absolutely wild. So this card is basically Rhoda / reincarnation, if you will. So you can add any Red Dragon Archfiend or a card that mentions it from your deck or grave to your hand. That's why I'm only running one Absolute Power Force and 1 Red Zone. It's because of that reason. It's because of the fact that you can add those cards back to your hand from your graveyard, which is nuts. And it also has a Book of Moon effect where during the battle phase, it can just automatically take all of your opponent's monsters and flip them face down, which is absolutely nuts. But it also has a third effect that says if a monster on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, special summon 1 Red Dragon Archfiend from your grave. You can't go wrong with that. You really cannot go wrong with the fact that it acts as a Monster Reborn, so you really don't need the Monster Reborn itself to revive any of your cards, which is absolutely crazy. And then of course the 3 Gates of Dark World. You can never go wrong. You really can't go wrong with that. Gates of Dark World is absolutely nuts, and it basically just furthers your plays even more, which is pretty cool. For my traps, I'm running 2 copies of Time to Stand Up, a Red Zone, and 2 Dark World Punishment. Okay. Alright, sorry guys, my phone is, apparently now my phone is on a strict time limit, which is kind of bullshit. I need to get a new iPad or a new camera somehow. I don't know where the hell I'm gonna get one in 2023. COVID, you guys, COVID struck, shit's gone crazy. Anyway, Time to Stand Up's effect basically lets you special summon up to 2 Resonator monsters and or level 1 dragons from your deck, as long as you have a Dragon Synchro on board. And it also has a negation effect where it says that when a monster effect is activated, while you control a level 10 or higher Dark Dragon Synchro, you can basically you can banish the card from your grave, negate the effect, and then target any synchro you have on board, and it gains 2,000 attack. If you have, let's say, I'll say Hod Red Dragon Archfiend Bane or King Calamity, if you will, or you know what, we'll say King Calamity. Let's say that. let's say that. I believe that is the ruling. If you have King Calamity on board, it gains 2,000 attack, giving it 6,000, basically giving it 6,000 attack. Absolute Power Force triggers, battle phase comes, it gains another 1,000, making it 7k, and you push for game. Plain and simple. Not much else to say about that. Red Zone is nuts. So the effect reads, when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control Red Dragon Archfiend or a single monster that mentions it, target a card on the field and destroy it. And it also says that you can target one of your band's Dark Dragon Synchros, special summon it. Red Supernova Dragon's effect would trigger during your opponent's turn. Guess what? Red Zone would bring it back. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Pretty good, guys. Absolutely wild. And then Dark World Punishment is basically solemn judgment, but for summoning monsters. And it also lets you and also just like Soul Resonator, Dark World Punishment also acts as a return of the Dragon Lords, which is also pretty crazy. That's pretty much it for the main deck. It's absolutely nuts. Again, as I said before, Crimson Resonator plus Beige and Dark World Dealings, you basically have Red Supernova Dragon right there. Speaking of the extra deck, for my synchros, I've got I've got a hell of a dragon lineup. So I've got two Red Rising Dragon, which I've already talked about before. I've already talked about its effect before. You get to resummon any one of your Resonator tuner monsters, which lets you go into yet another synchro, which is pretty awesome. I've got a single copy of Void Ogre Dragon, which acts as a Solemn Judgment, but for spells and traps, as long as you don't have any cards in your hand, which is pretty nuts. Then of course we got the original we've got the original Red Dragon Archfiend. You can never go wrong with that, especially with the fact that you've got Scar Red Dragon Archfiend in here. It's pretty crazy. Speaking of which, I've got two copies of Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend, which basically acts as a Dark Hole, but for pretty much any special summon monsters that are on the board, and your opponent takes a fuck ton of damage for each one. 500 damage for each monster destroyed. Then we got a single copy of Scar Red Dragon Archfiend. Basically, this card is in here as a way to summon out the original Red Dragon Archfiend, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Not much else. There's really not much else to say about that, but it also lets you as well, if I have this right, the effect reads that it becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the grave. If this card is sent from the monster zone to the grave, special summon Red Dragon Archfiend from your extra deck, which is treated as a synchro summon. And if this card was sent to the grave as synchro material for a Dark Dragon Synchro, you can destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. So it acts as another form of Raigeki, which is absolutely insanity. Then of course we got Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. This is a really good disruption, because you can target any one of your opponent's face-up back row, or pretty much any face-up card they have, and the effects are negated, which is awesome. But it only works until the end of the turn, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's still pretty good. Then we got Hot Archfiend Bane. This card basically is Monster Reborn. The effect reads that you contribute a monster, target one Red Dragon Archfiend monster in your grave, and special summon it. And when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon two tuners with the same level, one from the deck and one from the grave, in defense, which gives you access to go into your synchro plays during your main phase 2, which is really good. Then we got Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend. Not the best card to go into, but it's still a pretty powerful card on its own, especially with the fact that it's 3,500 attack, so it's pretty decent. So the effect reads that it must be synchro summoned, and it cannot be summoned by other ways, and you can only use each effect once per turn. So it says during your main phase you can destroy all other cards on the field, and for the rest of this turn, for the rest of the turn, other monsters you control cannot attack. So Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend is the only one that can attack, which is not bad. Your opponent takes a fuck ton of damage, but it's still pretty cool. It's still pretty cool nonetheless. And the other effect reads during either player's battle phase. When a spell or trap is activated, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if you do that, this card gains 500 attack. So it basically becomes a 4,000 body, which deals your opponent even more damage right off the bat, which is pretty insane. Then we got Dragocytos, Corrupted Nether Soul Dragon. This card is absolutely wild. This card can not only attack twice, not only can this card attack twice, but it cannot be destroyed in battle. And it also has an effect that says during your standby phase, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes half its current attack, and if it does, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the lost attack. So basically, your opponent takes damage equal to half of your opponent's monster's attack, which is absolutely insane. Then of course we got the two mega powerhouses, Red Supernova and Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. They're self-explanatory, not much else to say about them. Obviously, Red Supernova Dragon can wipe your opponent's board clean, giving you access to activate Red Zone to resummon it and just go from there. And then King Calamity is basically a way to stop hand traps from activating upon being summoned, which is pretty cool. Then for the Dark World fusions, we got Graphite Dragon Overlord of Dark World, which basically lets you negate monster effects or spells and traps while you have cards in your hand. So it reads that if your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell or trap card while you have cards in your hand, you can negate the effect, and the effect then becomes your opponent discards one card, which your Dark World monsters would benefit from it very quickly. And if it were to be, and if this card were to leave the field by an opponent's card, you get to summon Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World, that is either banished or in your graveyard, and then each player with a hand would have to discard a card. So it basically acts as a negation, if you will, which is pretty nuts. And then Colorless is nasty. So the effect reads: if this card is fusion summoned, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. This card's original attack and defense become the number of fusion materials used for its summon times 1,000. And once per turn, as a quick effect, you can target a face-up card you control, discard a card, and your opponent cannot target that face-up card with card effects this turn. So this basically is Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster in one fell swoop. Plain simple. Not much else to say about the extra deck. The side deck is a bit wonky, but this is just how I see it. So for my side deck, I have a second Grapha, 2 Ash Blossom, 2 Ghost Bell, 2 Grand Tactician of Dark World as a sort of like an MST like effect, which is pretty cool. A side friendly little Omega, just in case if none of my level 10 sinkers will work, I can side one of them out for the Omega, and Omega acts as a way to bounce cards from your banish pile back into your graveyard, so you can use their effects again, which is pretty nuts. Chaos King Archfiend basically is Sword and Shield. It swaps the attack and defense of all monsters that your opponent has, and it lets you gain access to push for game, which is pretty awesome. Then we got Dark Highlander. It's mainly in here to go up against any deck that has a bunch of equip cards in it, which is pretty cool. Not much else to say about that. And it also can deal 400 damage for each card destroyed, which is pretty cool. We have card destruction, which Dark World benefits off of card destruction. Monster Reborn, because it's Monster Reborn, and 3 copies of Zing Zang Hu to stop your opponent from using their back row, especially if you activate this card during their end phase. It's pretty wild. So that will do it for this deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button, and make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any new content that comes your way. And follow me on all of my social media. My ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.